On November 11, 1942, near the shores of Fedala in North Africa, the USS Hamilton pitches wildly amid the shadowy Mediterranean Sea. In the forward engine compartment, leading damage control specialist Robert Carey sweeps his beam through the haze of fumes. The sight chills him to the core. A German torpedo has torn a 30-foot gash in the destroyer's side. Ocean water surges inward at 8,000 gallons each minute. The vessel tilts 15 degrees toward the starboard. Her backbone warps under the pressure. With each swell, the divided sections of the ship grate harshly against one another. Carey is well aware of the grim data. Among the 31 U.S. destroyers struck by torpedoes in this conflict to date, just 7 have endured. The chances look bleak for the Hamilton. He dashes to the forward fire room, where the flood has already climbed to 4 feet. The built-in pumps are ruined beyond repair. The power grid has failed completely. Devoid of electricity, without functional pumps, and plunged into darkness, the Hamilton faces disintegration and a swift descent to the depths in mere hours. Unbeknownst to Chief Carey, the lightweight gasoline-driven pump he is on the verge of deploying, a 106-pound portable device stowed in the corridor, owes its existence to a tenacious Navy technician who 3 years prior rejected the notion of impossibility. This technician held no degree in engineering, no specialized instruction in fluid dynamics, only a dozen years of hands-on labor amid the guts of destroyers, plus a concept that every authority in the Bureau of Ships dismissed as foolhardy, hazardous, and an extravagant folly. His name was Thomas Red Sullivan, and his unapproved pump prototype would ultimately determine whether 2 U.S. sailors returned to their loved ones or rested eternally in the icy Atlantic. Yet back in 1938, when Sullivan first jotted his concept onto the reverse of a service record, the Navy's reaction came fast and unforgiving. Such actions violate policy. Halt this endeavor at once. This account details how a single technician's rebellion against protocol preserved more American warships than any high command strategy. How a pump portable by one individual proved worthier than an entire squadron of destroyers. And how the Navy came perilously close to trying the very man who rescued 40 foundering vessels in court-martial. In 1937, at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, the destroyer USS Porter rests in dry dock, bearing a huge rift along her starboard flank from a nighttime training mishap. Lieutenant Commander James Henderson paces the pier, eyeing the wreckage with mounting irritation. 6 hours, he tells the repair chief. It required 6 hours to drain her after the impact, 6 hours of her leaning at 32 degrees. Imagine the toll in lives during actual battle. The grim implication lingers heavy in the briny atmosphere. Every soul aboard. The challenge confronting the U.S. Navy during the late 1930s was straightforward yet lethal. Destroyers, those swift and agile mainstays of the fleet, prioritized velocity over resilience. Once struck by a torpedo or mine, they inundated disastrously, and the Navy's approach to clearing submerged sections was disastrously insufficient. Standard gear consisted of hefty fixed fire and bilge pumps reliant on electric current. But torpedo strikes obliterated power supplies in an instant. As the illumination vanished, so did the pumps, and with the pumps silenced, the ship perished. The Navy offered alternatives, labor-intensive hand-operated pumps, demanding 4 crew members toiling at levers for endless stretches to displace a meager 15 gallons per minute, or prototype electric immersion pumps that demanded operational generators, scarce on a vessel already submerging. Rear Admiral Harold G. Bowen, head of the Bureau of Engineering, captured the prevailing view in a 1937 dispatch. Mobile crisis pumping gear with adequate output cannot be rendered compact enough for destroyer applications. The bulk and storage demands render it unfeasible for ships of this type. Put plainly, destroyers were doomed to their destiny. Severely damaged, they would inevitably founder. Basic mechanics dictated it. The figures backed Bowen's dour outlook. In World War I, 74% of torpedo destroyers went under within half an hour. Rather than superior pumps, the Navy's fix was to construct additional destroyers as substitutes for those anticipated to be lost. But this entrenched doctrine faced opposition from a sturdy ginger-haired machinist's mate, second class, laboring the graveyard shift in the Philadelphia Navy Yard's pump overhaul facility. Thomas Patrick Sullivan, 32 years old, without higher education. Born to a Boston steamfitter, Sullivan enlisted in the Navy in 1926 after leaving school early to aid his kin. Over 12 years, he serviced the pumps, motors, and mechanisms vital to destroyer operations. He cleared corrosion, swapped seals, and overhauled fuel lines across 27 ships. Where Sullivan fell short on official qualifications, he made up for it with profound insight into real-world mechanics, as opposed to theoretical designs from engineers. And he had spotted an oversight by the specialists. During the USS Porter overhaul, Sullivan observes a private firm's compact gasoline-fueled water pump, a market model meant for building sites, effortlessly shifting 300 gallons per minute, all the while remaining remarkably heavy enough for just 2 guys to haul around. That evening, hunkered down in the tight confines of the workshop with a steaming pot of coffee and a fresh pack of Lucky Strikes, Sullivan crunches the numbers in his upkeep journal. An engine room on a destroyer spans roughly 20,000 cubic feet. If it's swamped up to the waterline, that's 12,000 cubic feet of salt water, requiring a 150,000-gallon pump at 15 gallons per minute. The dewatering time, 166 hours. In other words, a full week. A standard commercial gas pump could handle 300 gallons per minute, slashing that to 8 hours. Problem is, those units tip the scales at 450 pounds, way too cumbersome for urgent deployment on a battered pitching vessel in combat. Sullivan pores over his figures. Surely there's a compromise, something robust enough to make a difference yet portable enough to shift easily. He starts doodling tweaks in the edges of his logbook, no seeking approval. He dives right into construction, January 1938. In the pump repair facility at Philadelphia Navy Yard. It's 0200 hours. Sullivan toils under the glow of a lone hanging bulb. Scattered on his bench are components gathered from various spots. A compact 2-cylinder gas motor salvaged from a wrecked motor whaleboat, a rotary pump casing borrowed from a firefighting setup, ball bearings taken from a vessel's air circulation fan. His concept is strikingly straightforward. Pair a featherweight 2-stroke motor straight to a high-capacity rotary pump, bolt it all onto a frame of tubular steel, keep it small for single-man transport, engineer it to self-prime, and let it run even when dunked. The Navy's specialists built pumps as fixed fixtures, prioritizing upkeep access, safeguards, backups, and durability. Sullivan's focus is singular: sustain a foundering warship just long enough to rescue the sailors aboard. For 3 straight months, every evening after his standard duties, Sullivan lingers into the night, running gear trials. He orders supplies with ambiguous labels, spare pieces for firefighting assessments. He checks out instruments overnight under the guise of drills. He keeps his project under wraps from everyone. Above all, he steers clear of Lieutenant Commander Henderson, who'd have to flag any off-books gear creation. Come March 1938, Sullivan unveils a functional model. It clocks in at 108 pounds, pushes 60 gallons per minute under 100 psi, gets lugged by one person, sips a gallon of gas hourly, and tallies $87 in materials. Meanwhile, the Navy's official portable pump initiative has burned through 14,000 on gear that flops consistently. Sullivan's proving ground arrives March 19, 1938, amid a shipyard crisis. A civilian barge smacks into a moored destroyer escort, splitting a fuel hold. 400 gallons of diesel slosh into the ship's bilge, posing a dire blaze risk. Ordinary electric pumps choke on the thick fuel-water blend. Sullivan skips any go-ahead. He snatches his rogue pump, dashes to the vessel, and fires it up. Within 8 minutes, the bilge runs clear. From the quarterdeck, Lieutenant Commander Henderson observes. As Sullivan shuts down the motor, Henderson approaches deliberately. The whole yard workforce hushes. "Machinist's mate Sullivan," Henderson declares, his words carrying over the pier. "That pump you deployed, I don't spot it on the inventory roster." Sullivan snaps to attention, bracing for reprimand. "Moreover," Henderson presses on, "I can't fathom how this vessel would be secure at this moment absent it." He lingers a beat. "Report to my office at 0800. Haul in your pump and any schematics you've stashed in your locker." Sullivan lets out a breath, like the first in 90 days. The following day, Henderson places a pivotal call. He reaches out to Commander Andrew McKee at the Bureau of Construction and Repair in Washington, D.C. "You've got to witness this," Henderson urges, "and bend the rules just enough to observe it in action." April 1938, at the Bureau of Ships Evaluation Site in Washington Navy Yard. Commander McKee lingers in the downpour-drenched test pool, arms folded, eyeing Sullivan's pump with clear doubt. Nearby, 3 agency technicians pore over the procedure with thinly veiled scorn. Lieutenant Commander Henderson has escorted Sullivan and his build to the Capitol for formal review. The vibe is frosty. "Machinists mate," McKee remarks, gazing at the unit on the slab. "The Bureau invested 2 years and ample funds in crafting mobile dewatering options. Our guidelines demand compliance with safety norms, ecological rules, and acquisition protocols. This contraption seems to flout everyone." "Yes, sir," Sullivan replies. "It simply moves water." One engineer, a lanky fellow called Carlson, sporting circular glasses, scans Sullivan's sketched diagrams. "This motor lacks sufficient cooling for prolonged runs. The fuel reservoir has no venting. The exhaust will spew carbon monoxide exceeding enclosure limits, and this whole setup," he gestures scornfully, "wouldn't clear Bureau certification." "How much time did you invest in this unsanctioned endeavor?" McKee inquires. 3 months, sir, on the night watch, drawing on Navy assets." "Affirmative, sir." "Lacking approval?" "Correct, sir." McKee glances toward Henderson. "Commander, you realize this amounts to improper use of federal assets, forging of supply forms, and illicit assembly of gear." Henderson acknowledges with a nod. "Understood, sir. Yet I also grasp that the Navy forfeits 7 of every 10 destroyers hit by torpedoes simply because we failed to dewater them swiftly enough. I'm requesting you observe a brief 10-minute demo prior to any court-martial proceedings." The technical staff share uneasy looks. This procedure is most unconventional. "Very well," McKee replies with a chill edge. 10 minutes. Sullivan activates the pump. It fires up on the 3rd tug, humming into a clattering 2-cycle cadence. He lowers the intake tube into the trial tank and advances the lever. A powerful jet surges from the outlet pipe. 60 gallons per minute. The tank's level indicator falls without pause. Carlson starts his timer. "What's the suction height?" 20 feet, sir," Sullivan answers. "That's beyond feasibility for a unit of this scale," Carlson objects. Still, he approaches the tank's rim and verifies the reading personally. Surprise flickers across his face. Over the next 9 minutes, Sullivan puts the device through a series of trials, varying intake levels, blocked inlets, tilted operations. Each one performs flawlessly. As Sullivan shuts down the motor, a heavy quiet settles across the workshop. At last, McKee breaks the hush. The department's stance holds firm. This blueprint poses risks, lacks proper records, and won't gain endorsement via standard routes. Sullivan's posture sags. He's braced for the fallout. But McKay continues, "That said, Commander Henderson has persuaded me that defense needs might demand unconventional sourcing methods." He shifts to Carlson. "How quickly can we dissect this for formal blueprints?" Carlson eyes the pump intently. "Sir, that would entail..." "This is a directive, not a discussion. Deliver manufacturing plans within 30 days. A faint grin tugs at Sullivan's lips, yet the true struggle lies ahead. May 1938, Bureau of Ships Meeting Hall, Washington, D.C. Commander McKay unveils Sullivan's pump prototype to the Bureau's Urgent Gear Evaluation Panel. 15 high-ranking officers and non-military experts occupy the oak-lined chamber. Skepticism fills the air even before McKee wraps his opening remarks. Captain Harold Smemedberg, overseer of destroyer blueprints, voices the initial objection. "Commander, naval protocols exist for good cause. This apparatus carries zero safety validations, no production checks, no reliable sourcing network. You're proposing we deploy fleet-wide a gadget crafted in a shed by an enlisted mechanic who flunked elementary engineering quals." Rear Admiral Bowen shifts ahead. "The mass constraints by themselves rule out this method. Our analyses indicate that viable dewatering for destroyer crisis response demands gear over 300 pounds. Lighter options compromise output or sturdiness, but this unit achieves 60 gallons per minute weighing just 106 pounds, McKee counters. Under lab settings, Carlson adds, his confidence waning slightly. Its behavior in battle, seawater erosion, prolonged runs, blast impacts, remains unproven. Henderson rises. Sirs, if I may, we lack data on those factors precisely because no trials have occurred there, but our existing kit consistently falters in precisely those crises. The assembly bursts into chaos. This borders on irresponsibility. Smemberg slams the desk. We're debating gear that might doom crewmen via exhaust fumes, motor blazes, or breakdowns in vital instants. The present setup dooms them via flooding, Henderson retorts, every single time a compartment overflows. Gentlemen, McKee quiets the uproar. I didn't submit this idea for debate. I advanced it because USS Porter would have gone under had machinist's mate Sullivan not deployed this pump in a crisis. That's no hypothesis. It occurred. Admiral Bowen slips off his spectacles, polishing them deliberately. Commander, supposing this concept holds value, which I'm not granting, the acquisition process can't integrate a contraption pieced from scraps by off-the-books hands. We rely on agreements, suppliers, blueprints, legislative review. Then revise them, Henderson states softly. Hush descends on the group. Sir, he presses on, conflict looms on the horizon, all here sense it. When hostilities erupt, we'll shed destroyers by the score, and those losses will stem not from combat weakness, but from vulnerability to hits they can't endure. His tone sharpens. I've seen crewmen perish in swamped power plants as our sanctioned tools lay idle overhead. I refuse to witness that anew due to excessive red tape blocking an effective fix. Admiral Bowen fixes Henderson with a prolonged gaze. Then he pivots to Sullivan, who has remained mute throughout the session. Machinist's mate, Sullivan. What prompted you to construct this pump? Sullivan shifts uncomfortably. Sir, I grew weary of repeatedly repairing the identical faulty gear that kept failing. I thought that if I could repair pumps, perhaps I could design an improved version. You lacked approval for this. That's correct, sir. You doctored supply orders. Indeed, sir, you breached numerous rules. I suspect that's true, sir. Why endanger your professional future over it? Sullivan pauses briefly. Then, my sibling perished by drowning aboard the USS Jacob Jones after it was struck by a torpedo in 1917, sir. They were unable to dewater the vessel. I was just 7 at the time. I enlisted in the Navy, hoping to mend what malfunctions. This device required mending. The chamber grows utterly quiet. Admiral Bowen adjusts his spectacles. Captain Smemberg, your concerns are recorded and dismissed. Commander McKee, collaborate with the Supply Bureau to set up urgent acquisition protocols for this gear. Produce 50 units and deliver them to destroyer groups in under 6 months. He turns to Sullivan and adds, Machinist's mate Sullivan will oversee manufacturing to guarantee the devices align with his designs. Smemberg erupts in protest. Admiral, this establishes a risky example. The example, Bowen cuts in, is that the U.S. Navy prioritizes outcomes over procedures when the lives of Americans hang in the balance. This session concludes. As the officers depart, McKee murmurs to Henderson, We've triumphed here, yet they'll hold this against us forever. If you're discovering fresh insights into BB Bolar history, smash that subscribe button. We share overlooked tales like this one weekly, ones absent from standard books, and stay tuned since the true trial for Sullivan's pump loomed ahead in the Pacific War's most perilous seas. The pump earns its label, P60. P stands for portable, 60 indicates gallons per minute. Come December 1941, as Japanese explosives rain down on Pearl Harbor, 187 P60 handy-billy pumps operate across the Pacific Fleet. Each destroyer boasts a minimum of 2, though they spark debate, costly, demanding upkeep, and dismissed by plenty of officers as improvised tools, unfit for genuine naval warfare. That view vanishes on November 11, 1942, near North Africa's shoreline. USS Hamilton, DD 455. 1952 hours, Chief Robert Carey hauls a P60 pump into the forward fire room where the water surges 4 feet high and keeps ascending. The torpedo impact has inundated 3 sections. The vessel tilts perilously. Bureau engineers deem this situation beyond salvage. Carey ignores their views. He wields a pump against a doomed ship. He yanks the starter rope once, twice. On the third tug, the compact 2-stroke motor ignites with a fierce rumble, its sharp chatter resounding in the submerged area. He submerges the intake hose in the greasy flood and advances the throttle. The pump grips the water right away. Liquid surges via the outlet hose, forming a powerful jet that curves over the rail into the shadowy Mediterranean. Over 11 hours, Carey and his repair crew sustain the P-60's operation. The gas motor warms excessively on 2 occasions. They douse it with brine. The fuel conduit blocks up. They dislodge it using wire. The belt loosens. They tighten it via a tool. Yet the pump persists without falter. Gradually, bit by bit, the fire room's water recedes. At first light, Hamilton's incline eases from 15 degrees to 8. The forward fire room empties. Pressure on the fractured hull lessens. When rescue tugs reach her for the pull to Casablanca, she's steady for the trip. Lieutenant Commander Julian Wheeler, Hamilton's second-in-command, submits a document arriving at the Bureau of Ships 3 weeks on. Absent the mobile gas pump, this craft would have sunk inside 4 hours post-torpedo. The device excelled amid battle stresses. Seek more for every destroyer. The P-60 demonstrates reliability time after time. USS Abner Red, DD-526, August 18, 1943, off Kiska Island. A mine blasts beneath the destroyer's rear, rupturing both propeller drives and swamping the rear areas. Dual P-60 pumps manage the influx for 14 hours as she's guided to security. 71 crewmen endure. Sans those pumps, fatalities would hit 323. USS Foote, DD-511, November 2, 1943, Bougainville, Japanese torpedo. Rear section demolished, inundation across 4 areas. P-60 pumps bolstered by post-Sullivan F-500 models. They expel liquid quicker than the sea replenishes it. The destroyer hobbles to Espiritu Santo. 290 sailors persist for future battles. USS Ross, DD-563, July 1944, Normandy. Dual German mines, widespread flooding, major hull harm. A gale brings 12-foot swells. Ross endures via repair teams, not shields or chance, but by powering P-60 pumps non-stop for 38 hours amid breakers sweeping the primary deck. Yet the peak endorsement arrives at Okinawa amid frenzied Japanese kamikaze strikes, April 16, 1945. USS Laffey, DD-724, Radar Sentry Post 1. 22 Japanese planes swarm the destroyer in a unified barrage. The assault stretches on for 80 minutes. 6 kamikazes slam straight into Laffey. 4 explosives tear through her deck. Blazes erupt across 3 decks. Flooding surges into 5 compartments all at once. Saving her seems utterly hopeless. Fire Control Officer Lieutenant Frank Manson later recounts the chaos. Flames engulfed us from the bridge right to the fantail. The vessel was tilting badly. We'd forfeited steering control. Half our gun stations lay in ruins, and seawater rushed in through various breaches. According to every lesson drilled into us, Laffey was gone. She simply hadn't gone under yet. Yet the damage control teams, guided by Chief Machinist's mate Robert Johnson, wouldn't yield. They dragged P-60 pumps across choking smoke and roaring fires into the inundated areas. They power the pumps using manually transported gasoline cans since the fuel lines are wrecked. When shrapnel knocks out one pump, they strip components from another to sustain a third one operating for 6 hours. As fighter patrols from combat air scatter the lingering kamikazes and support ships close in on Laffey's location, Johnson's groups extract water from the hull more swiftly than the sea can refill it. Laffey endures. The strike claims 32 sailors' lives, yet 294 pull through. The destroyer limps under her own steam to Saipan for fixes. Admiral Raymond Spruance, head of the 5th Fleet, inspects Laffey while she's docked. He examines the wreckage, the kamikaze strike scars, the charred interiors, the mangled metalwork. He pauses before a P-60 pump positioned on the deck, its body pitted by shrapnel, its housing blackened by soot, yet fully functional. "This device rescued your vessel?" Spruance inquires of Johnson, "along with 2 more just like it, sir." "Indeed." Spruance gazes at the pump intently for a prolonged instant. Then he addresses his aide. Ensure every vessel in the fleet gets one of these, not merely the destroyers, every single one. The end-of-war figures tell the tale plainly. By conflict's close, P-60 pumps had outfitted 647 U.S. Navy ships. In verified instances of destroyers hit by severe torpedo or mine strikes, 40 craft held together that might have otherwise perished. That's 40 vessels safeguarding 12,000 sailors who returned home rather than resting eternally in the Pacific depths. German U-boat leader Reinhard Hartigan, taken prisoner in 1945, shares thoughts with U.S. naval intelligence. Queried on U.S. damage mitigation skills, he remarks, "We'd strike your destroyers with torpedoes meant to submerge them swiftly. Hours afterward, scouts would spot those identical ships being towed, stubbornly buoyant. It crushed spirits. We dubbed them the zombie ships, those undead hulls that defied sinking." What Hartigan couldn't grasp was that such zombie vessels bore a tool he never glimpsed, a 106-pound pump crafted by a machinist's mate lacking a high school diploma. Before wrapping up this account, a small request. Mind giving this video a like? It prompts YouTube to spread word of these overlooked champions to wider audiences. Now, onto Red Sullivan's post-war path. At the 1946 Philadelphia Navy Yard decommissioning event, Thomas Red Sullivan appears in his crisp dress whites, holding the chief machinist's mate rank, as Admiral Jonas Ingram awards him the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. The commendation states, "For extraordinary valor in crafting urgent damage control gear that plainly prevented the loss of multiple ships and spared countless lives." The gathering stays modest. No media, no footage. Just a few officers and the yard workers who'd collaborated with Sullivan over 2 decades. Post-ceremony, Commander Henderson, now Captain Henderson following his stellar wartime record, draws Sullivan apart. "You realize why they hushed this event?" Henderson probes. Sullivan gives a nonchalant lift of his shoulders. "Guess the Navy prefers not confessing that Top Gear sprang from a regular guy who sidestepped protocols." Henderson chuckles. "Spot on. But confidentially read, your pump preserved more U.S. sailors than figures can tally." He hesitates. "So, what's next for you?" "Conflict's done. You could pen a memoir, hit the speaking tour. Shoot, you might advise major defense firms at tenfold your naval pay." Sullivan scans the Navy Yard, eyeing the destroyers slated for storage. Their battle's concluded. "Captain, I'm merely a fixer. I mend what's busted. The Navy has loads more repairs ahead. I plan to stick around, carrying on as before." And that's precisely his course. Sullivan logs another 12 years of duty before stepping away in 1958 at 52. He turns down all interview bids, rejects publishing offers, stays silent in public on his pump innovation. The P-60 stays active in U.S. Navy use through 1970, succeeded by the 250 featuring upgraded tech, yet rooted in the identical foundational approach: compact, mobile, dependable crisis tools that any standard crew can manage, sans expert prep. Today's U.S. Navy damage control pumps echo Sullivan's core tenets: compact for rapid transport, straightforward for high-pressure use, tough enough to weather battle's turmoil. In the Naval Damage Control Museum in Philadelphia, an impeccably restored P-60 pump occupies a prominent spot. Its inscription declares, "The device that wouldn't allow vessels to perish." Sullivan rests in a serene burial ground just beyond Boston. His headstone offers no nod to his groundbreaking creation or the countless souls spared by his bold disregard for protocol. It merely states, "Thomas P. Sullivan, USN, Chief Machinist's Mate. He made sure operations continued." Back in 1987, at the gathering of USS Laffey survivors, 92-year-old ex-Chief Robert Johnson addresses the group of fellow vets, most in their 70s by then. He displays a picture of the P-60 pump. "We recount the kamikazes we downed," Johnson declares, his tone robust as ever. "We honor the gunners, the leaders, and the crew battling above deck. Yet I'll reveal what truly preserved Laffey on that fateful day. It was this right here, a contraption crafted by an obscure engineer no one recalls. To that fellow, wherever he may be, thanks to your ingenuity, we all made it back. We owe you." The audience erupts in cheers for a stranger they'd never known. Often the true champions aren't those storming the fray with weapons firing. More frequently, they're the quiet innovators toiling late in garages, armed with basic implements, leftover parts, and unyielding resolve to solve dilemmas others deem hopeless. Thomas Sullivan never led armadas, secured victories, or chased acclaim. He simply engineered a reliable solution amid total collapse. Through that act, he rescued myriad lives that rigid rules, outdated customs, and the fatal notion of "that's not feasible" might have doomed. When doubters dismiss your concept as too risky next time, think of that pump. Recall Red Sullivan. Realize that defying the authorities and forging ahead can be the vital move. Out there, a vessel might be going under, and somewhere, a person relies on the unique fix only you can devise. Welcome to the Last Words channel, sharing tales of everyday folks achieving remarkable feats precisely when the world required them. Hit subscribe for additional hidden gems from World War II and further eras. And keep in mind, one of the most powerful terms you know might just be next.